The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Arber Podkolzin. Au revoir, Arber. Comme ci, comme ça. I failed French, and I'm going to tell you that story in a little bit on this episode of Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, happy Tuesday, happy July 16th. This is the middle of summer, baby, but you're here. We're still here on Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also a Canucks writer currently with a Daily Hive, Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you. I'm talking to you for tuning into Locked On Canucks. You know why? Because it's your Canucks every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network, doing the most for sports fans across the world. And for our show, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And hey, maybe right now you're listening to this podcast sitting on a beach in your Speedo, in your bikini, doing what you do, and you don't want to think about work. But if you decide to start thinking about work, our sponsor of today's show, they got you okay, because today's show is sponsored by Indeed. Make sure if you're hiring, start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Now, Arber Xhekaj, he was a focal point of yesterday's episode. We talked about trade targets from the Montreal Canadiens, but let's just dive in a little further, because I do think he is a really interesting target for the Vancouver Canucks. And, you know, we got some blowback. I got some blowback on the potential trade targets. Let's talk about...
You did. You did. You get what I said there? You did get some blowback.
There you go. I did get some blowback. Yeah. So let's actually dive into Arber Xhekaj's real value, what the Canucks might give up to get him. And we'll also talk a bit about another young Canuck forward who, could be involved in this deal as well. Before we get to all that, let me introduce my co-host. Kyle, we got a couple of things in common. Both our girls left us for girls. We both didn't do very well in French class, but here we are, bonded by those two things. What's going on, buddy?
Yeah, I failed French. It was a really terrifying story on how it all happened, right? I skipped about 20 French classes out of 30, got pulled into the principal's office. They made me call my dad while he was at work to tell him that I skipped that many classes in that amount of days. And he was disappointed, but he also was busy at work. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, immigrant father, okay? For real. He didn't even know I was taking French. For real. Anyways, we are all French Canadian, okay? From grade 5 all the way to grade 11, I was taking French. We are all French Canadian. I don't even know that much Hindi. You get what I'm saying? I am French Canadian, okay? Comme ci, comme ça, je m'appelle Beggsy and Bhawan. And I got to say this, man. Trevor Beggs getting a lot of blowback. I guess that's the word of the day on what he did yesterday, right? Because he said that the Canucks could get this Arber Xhekaj, this Arber guy for a third-round pick. And you also did mention other things. Like you said, third-round pick and more. But man, oh man, the Montreal Canadian fans, they just held on to that third-round pick notion, and they went after you, okay? They're like, yo, I'm never watching this podcast again. This is why Vancouver doesn't deserve a hockey team, because their fans don't know anything about hockey, okay? We should get rid of the whole Western Conference. The West doesn't deserve hockey. That's what the people in Montreal were saying after yesterday's episode, Trevor. Explain yourself, because you did us dirty? Did you do us wrong? What's going on here? Because you put a dark cloud over everything West Coast hockey, because apparently you know nothing about the value of a guy named Arber Xhekaj.
Arber Xhekaj. Here's the thing, and I think this is a classic case. And fans of all teams do this, but we do love to overvalue our own players. Now, I'll set a couple of things straight here. I think I mentioned one thing about Arber Xhekaj being rumored to be on the trade market, and have fans look at this as in they're not trading Arber Xhekaj. Look, he was in trade rumors earlier this year, right? Elliot Friedman mentioned it, and he spent some time in the AHL, and teams are starting to wonder, like, oh, is Montreal not quite valuing this guy as much as they did in the 2022-23 season? And one of the reports out there was that this is from Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period. Take it with a grain of salt. The report was back in January that the Habs turned down an offer for a former first-round pick with second-line potential. And I'd have Habs fans hitting me up like they turned down a first-round pick for Xhekaj, and I'm like, that's even if you whether or not you believe Dave Pagnotta, I don't think that's what happened. Look, and we're going to talk about one of the guys who could be potentially involved in that deal, and that's Vasily Podkolzin. Vasily Podkolzin, is he also not a first-round pick? Maybe if you squint, maybe some teams believe he still has second-line potential. So I mean, again, teams love to overvalue their own players, and maybe I'll throw some numbers at you, Cal. So one of the stats I love to use is average game score, right? Arber Xhekaj's average game score last year, 0.34 per game. Here's a couple other players who had similar numbers. Nikita Zadorov during the regular season last year for the Canucks had 0.31. Okay, so again, not a great regular season. Vincent Desharnais, who we weren't huge fans of the signing. He was 0.43 last year.
Whoa.
Ian Cole 0.56. I'm just saying, there's guys like Ian Cole, Vincent Desharnais, who I think most people think are not as sexy or as valued as Arber Xhekaj. But lo and behold, they're posting better numbers last season again relative to their team. So look, Arber Xhekaj is a good defenseman, but he is a bottom pairing defenseman. He doesn't play pretty much no special teams, no power play, no penalty kill. But again, fans love him because he's big and physical, right? Yeah. That's these players tend to get overvalued a bit. But Kyle, you can tell me if I'm crazy or not. But the third round pick for Arber Xhekaj, look, I think I said in the episode yesterday, that starts the conversation. And I think that's in the realm of what you should and could be giving up for Arber Xhekaj.
Okay, so what's the deal, right? If anyone's new to the program, you know that I'm the honest guy in the program. Okay, Kyle Bhawan, the honest guy, Trevor Beggs, the darker guy in the program. I haven't watched a lot of this guy play. Okay, I don't follow a lot of the Montreal Canadiens. Why? Because they kind of they're rebuilding. Okay, I was gonna say they kind of suck, but they're just not that team. I'm looking at his stats. I'm looking at the games played. And I'm asking myself, like, he couldn't have been hurt the whole time, right? He's playing a lot of AHL games. Is that correct? Like, what's going on here?
For part of the season. He was in the AHL for part of the season, and then the season also got shut down with shoulder surgery towards the end of the campaign as well. And his numbers in the AHL weren't bad, but again, you got a Canadian team, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to bring up the whole, could the Canucks acquire a defenseman from Montreal? Look, the four guys I mentioned yesterday, and again, if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode, go check it out wherever you listen to the Zoo podcast. Jordan Harris and Justin Barron are two similar players, right? Both younger puck-moving defensemen. And then you have Jaden Struble and Arber Xhekaj, who are both similar defensemen, similar age, both physical, both play the left side. So Montreal, again, with this logjam they have on the blue line in terms of guys coming up, I think those four guys I mentioned, I think two of them are expendable. And lo and behold, two of them, Arber Xhekaj and Justin Barron, are still not signed to contracts right now.
Whoa, boom, boom, boom. And this is allowing me to think about this, right? The whole Podkolzin thing. I think somebody asked you in the comments, because we got some smart ass fans for real. Yesterday's episode, somebody mentioned it. Would you do Podkolzin for Arber Alphabet? And you said no, not straight up. And that probably pissed off the East Coast too, for real. Like, Montreal Canadian fans probably want to book flights so they could egg your house with cheese curds. Okay, for real, they were pissed. But man, this kind of makes sense, because we are going to talk about this in a couple minutes more blatantly. But man, oh man, like, where does Podkolzin fit on this team, and how can he not be somewhat of a trade chip for a team that may be overvaluing him? You know what I'm saying? And if the Canucks defense is going into the season looking like the way it is, man, oh man, if the Canucks can get somebody to bite on Podkolzin, or I don't want to be too poo-pooing on the guy, because he could still be something, right? If they could get something for him, I know Alvin and Rutherford would be interested, because, man, like, where does he play? This all being said, though, man, he just signed a 2-year deal, didn't he? Like, what an interesting conversation, because I could definitely see a team that's at a surplus of all these defensemen look at a guy like Podkolzin, and a switch there could be made.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a chance of it. Now, again, I think, the defenseman is the premium position here, but, you're looking at Canadians team with, again, a logjam on the blue line. And what is the ceiling for both these players? I really do think that the ceiling for Podkolzin is probably a third liner, and the ceiling for Xhekaj is probably a bottom pairing defenseman. Maybe with this coaching staff, they get him to be a low end top 4 guy, but realistically speaking, it's a bottom pairing defender for a third line winger.
Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know. I kind of think that, the more I think about it, Podkolzin for Xhekaj, I'd be hesitant to do it 1-for-1 because of, I think Podkolzin's resume, but I think in a nutshell, I think that's kind of fair value, to be honest with you. If you're looking at Podkolzin for Xhekaj, that's in the realm too. A third for Xhekaj, Podkolzin for Xhekaj. Maybe, Kyle, we'll touch on this and we'll get to the other side. As Podkolzin in a third, would that be too much for you to give up for Arber Wi-Fi?
Arber Wi-Fi, dude, Montreal does not want any third round picks. Based on what happened in yesterday's episode, Trevor Beggs, I was scared for you, man. I thought they were gonna send death threats to your family, man. For real. I was reading those comments. I was going, dude, I was scared, man. I was about to call Locked On HR to get you some security at home, man. Okay, shout out to Tegna. Man, oh man, they don't want no third round pick. They don't want it. And genuinely speaking, I could see a 1-for-1 type of thing happen for a Montreal team that may not need more draft picks, right? You get what I'm saying? Like maybe they want somebody who's quote unquote a little developed, and Podkolzin is that guy. But again, we're going to talk more about Podkolzin in like 10 minutes because I know there's this appetite for a big, strong defenseman who likes to fight and lay the body because we just lost Zadorov, right? But based on how Podkolzin was playing when he was in the lineup last season, can he be that guy as a forward? You get what I'm saying? I'm not saying dropping the gloves, but laying the boom. You know what I'm saying? Can he be a part of Joshua, Sherwood, Podkolzin, just being those dogs in the forward group? So again, in like 10 to 15 minutes, we'll touch on that. Let's talk about possibly giving Wi-Fi an offer sheet, maybe some other offer sheet candidates out there for the Vancouver Canucks that may involve what? Them giving up a third round pick at most, right? Trevor Beggs, man, your favorite pick, the third round pick. More on that in a couple of minutes. Beggsy, who we shouting out on this episode of Locked On Canucks?
All right. Yeah. Offer sheet talk, Podkolzin talk, all coming up on the other side here on Locked On Canucks after we shout out our friends over at Indeed.
Boom, boom.
Hey, I said it off the top, it's not necessarily the season where people are hunting for jobs, right? I mean, a lot of us are scratching our sack on the beach. A lot of employers, taking off on their yachts, listening to yacht rock, which is apparently now all the rage nowadays. But if you are looking for work or you're hiring, make sure that you use Indeed, because Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data. They got a magic engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed just doesn't help you hire faster. 93% of employees agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality of matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring a professional butt wiper so easy, okay? With Indeed, okay, there's all kinds of jobs out there, okay? You could leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every single day. And Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. So make sure listeners of the show, you will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. You can just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
People, we back doing this, and that's giving you this episode of Locked On Canucks. Kyle Bhawan, Trevor Beggs, doing everything. And yeah, one love to Indeed for sponsoring the episode. Man, oh man, Trevor Beggs, 2024, you said there's a chance that you could be looking for a job as a professional butt wiper. If you don't know, Trevor Beggs actually did that job in high school, I think, maybe. I know this sounds, he worked at an old folks home. I don't know if the math lines up there, but it was a different era back in the day. Did you know that nowadays you could get hired as a professional cuddler? Have you heard about this?
No.
A professional cuddler. Okay. So let me break this down for you. Okay. In simple terms, if your significant other wanted to switch careers and be a professional cuddler, would you let her do it? Like, based on the fact that you've been broken up with before, your past love left you for another girl, and now your new girl wants to be a professional cuddler as her career choice. Like, are you okay with that? Because how about that one, man?
Hmm. You know what? That doesn't seem like a very stressful job, right? Unless you kind of have to be like a therapist throughout the whole thing.
No, you have to
Uh,
for sure.
you know what, man? My girl's an amazing cuddler. So, if she
Hmm.
felt like she could get paid to spread those talents to the rest of the world, I mean, yeah,
You're a
I'm,
strong
I'm
man.
for it, man. That's all right. That's all
You're a
right.
strong man. You're a strong man. Anyways, let's talk more about offer sheeting, Wi-Fi over here. Maybe offer sheeting other players. I'm curious to see if Trevor Beggs did research on who's available out there, who hasn't signed a contract, and who can possibly replace this right-handed D-man quota that the Vancouver Canucks are apparently missing. Because the closer and closer we get to September, I know like the whole NHL is off, and Alvin's probably, I don't know, in Thailand right now. But it kind of seems like we actually may be going into September and October with Myers being our second pairing right-hand defenseman. Anyways, is there anyone on this RFA? I haven't signed a contract that could be using an offer sheet anytime soon. A list that you see outside of this Jack guy. And if it is only Jack guy, what's the dollar amount looking like?
Yeah, so let me touch on Jack Guy first, and I'll get to other candidates out there. So, just for those who don't know, here's the 2024 offer sheet compensation. So, if you sign a guy for 1.51 million or less, there's no compensation. Between 1.51 and 2.2, it's a third round pick. For 2.2, it's actually 2.29, and up to 4.5, it's a second round pick. And now I think that's where I think the Canadians would probably match if Jack were to get above 2.2. But then I think that would give them some pause too, because if you get a second round pick for a guy who, again, is he much more than a bottom pairing defenseman? Do you have another guy like Jaden Struble who could step in and replace him competently? I think so. I do wonder if Jack got offer sheeted for the value of a second round pick, if that would give the Canadians some pause for thought. I think for the most part, we've seen teams do this. They match just because they're petty and they don't like their players being offer sheeted. But that's, I think, where you get to the territory of, will the Canadians actually match this? This is that second round pick territory. And if it's not Jack Guy, I think some of the other, talk about a couple of the defensemen still out there. Like I mentioned it before, Justin Barron's another guy, right? Right shot defenseman, less physical, a bit more of a puck mover. He's still an RFA. And then the other defenseman that caught my attention too was Jordan Spence of the LA Kings. Jordan Spence, again, smaller guy. He had 24 points in 71 games last season. Really played well in a bottom pairing role. And let's just throw another one, just because we're trying to piss off Canadians fans. Let's piss off Oilers fans too, because Philip Broberg is also still an RFA. And hey, that guy didn't get a lot of opportunity last season, but he did step up in the playoffs. So I do think he's going to be part of the Oilers' plans moving forward. I'm not sure if a second round pick would get Broberg after what he did in the Stanley Cup Finals, but that's some food for thought.
No, it is a food. It is a food for thought. And just to clarify, if the Canucks were to offer one of these guys like 3.5 million, like what's the compensation?
3.5 would be a second round pick. So it's a second round pick between 2.2, let's call it 2.3 and 4.5 million.
Damn, even 2.3 is a bit of a low bar, but to give up a second round, that's a lot, man. Trevor, again, apparently this Jordan Spence guy is a diamond in the rough, according to Bob Luger, one of the scouts here on Locked On Canucks. All in all, though, like, why don't you think more teams use this tool in their toolkit? Okay, considering that you shouldn't really care about the feelings of other GMs. You know what I'm saying? I know you have to negotiate with these guys and get on the phone with these guys and possibly make deals down the road, but at the end of the day, it's a cutthroat business. You're trying to win. It's us against the world. Why aren't we seeing more offer sheets?
Well, I think you mentioned it before a little bit, right? I think it's what you got to give up, right? Do you really want to give up a second round pick for a guy who is a middle of the lineup, bottom of the lineup player, right? Do you want to give up a couple first round picks for a star? And I think it's the fact that it's relationship based, right? There's only 32 GMs in the league, and yeah, these guys are getting fired here and there. But if you piss off another GM, it's like, have you severed that tie in terms of making a deal moving forward? I think GMs are, I don't know, maybe a little bit too caught up in each other's feelings a bit. I mean, we would love it as fans to see more offer sheets, but I think it's maybe if they diminish what the compensation would be draft pick wise. But it's a double-edged sword because then teams are more likely to match if they're not getting draft picks in return. So I do think it goes back to the general managers just being too nice and respectful of one another. Come on, man. We don't need this kind of respect, man. What's going on?
Yeah, straight up. It's something that I would definitely do more of if I was a GM now. Again, it's this summer. It's July 16th or 17th, whatever the day is. Let me tell you the story about my experience with the offer sheet. And ironically, it has a little bit to do with the Montreal Canadiens. Way back when the NHL video games had a GM connected mode. Do you know what that is? It was like a virtual league with 30 other GMs playing, with a select team. Like it was like a regular season. It was like real-ish. You have a team and you have to play 82 games with other GMs and then get into the playoffs. So it was sick. It was one of the greatest modes ever. Fast forward, I won the Stanley Cup, and in that offseason, I offered PK Subban a one-year max offer sheet because I had I won the Cup with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I had so much cap space still. I had like $30 million or $20 million. So I spent like 13 mil or 12 mil at the time on PK Subban on a one-year offer sheet, and the other GM couldn't match, and I got him, and I almost got banned for the league because apparently I did something wrong. Like, that's not realistic, No team would ever give out a one-year offer sheet worth 12 mil. Dude, it would happen. I mean, didn't Carolina do that with Kotkaniemi? Kotkaniemi?
It was the one-year $6.1 million deal.
Is it Kotkaniemi or is it Kotkaniemi? Or is it Cock?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't even think you're cutting out. I think you're just saying cock over and over again. It's Kotkaniemi.
Okay, so Carolina did that with Montreal, though. Wasn't it like a one-year, $8 million deal or something?
Yeah, I think it was 1 year, 6.1, I believe. Yeah.
That's crazy. That would be cool, More of that stuff happening.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice, Kyle. Okay, let's wrap up the show on the other side talking about Vasily Podkolzin, okay? We mentioned him as a potential target for Arber Xhekaj. Where's this guy slotted in the lineup next season? What is the future for Vasily Podkolzin if it's not with the Bleu Blanc et Rouge? Let's get to that on the other side after we scratch our sacks and get back here on Locked On Canucks.
People, we back doing this, and that's giving you an episode of Locked On Canucks and talking about our hockey lives and spending money on offer sheets and talking about Trevor getting his head shoved in hot boiling poutine by some Montreal Canadian fans because they hate him. Right? Because they think Arber Alphabet is worth only a third-round pick. Man, oh man, it's a beautiful time to be talking hockey in the summer with you and you and you and you. Hey, speaking of you and you and you and you, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, okay? For real. It really helps us out a lot over here at the Don't Doze Art Lab and Trevor Beggs' household. Man, oh man, we are blessed to be doing this, and we are blessed to be having this problem. Is that realistic when I say us being confused about Podkolzin's place in the lineup is a good thing, considering our depth has, I don't know, progressed so much in the last 18 months? Because I'm looking at the depth chart, and I'm like, holy ish. Like, the only way Podkolzin makes his team is if he becomes a new Sam Lafferty. Am I wrong? Anyways, it feels like a situation with Podkolzin. What's he going to do? Where's his place on this team? Is he going to be traded? What's his potential? Can he fill a void? Beggsy, answer all my questions.
Look, I think first and foremost, Podkolzin does have value in terms of the floor, right? It's the ceiling that's the issue, but I think he brings value in terms of the floor. He kills penalties. I think he found a nice sweet spot on the power play in the AHL this season. He can still bang and crash. I think there's things like about Podkolzin's game. If you could trade him for Arber Xhekaj, though, let's do it. I'm down. I've come around on that. Podkolzin for Xhekaj, baby. Let's go. But if he does stick around with your Vancouver Canucks, look right now, he's the 12th forward on this team. He's fighting for a spot in the lineup, much like he was last offseason when he was one of the first cuts at training camp because he just didn't have it together. And, you got to give him a bit of grace there because he did have a newborn child. And, that's a lot of work, man. That's a lot of work.
No, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. The newborn child thing was a significant thing. And also, man, he was, again, I'm going to look at the little things, and I'm going to attach myself to recency bias. I'm also going to attach myself to trusting Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, the same two who gave this guy a 2-year deal. worth pennies, but you know what I'm saying? They still believe in this guy to give this guy a 2-year deal. I'm going to lean into that and realize that, okay, Podkolzin last year has a kid. He has the worst training camp of all time. That's what it seemed like. That's what it looked like, for real. He gets sent down to Abbotsford, and he's ripping it up. He's doing his thing. He's looking even flashy. And then, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing or if I'm just being delusional and just flabbergasting too much, but I feel as if he had a near-death incident on the ice. Head crashing against the ice. You know what I'm saying? That happened after, again, he just shows flashes of brilliance in the AHL after having the worst training camp ever. Then he comes back into the lineup in Abbotsford, and he's doing his thing. He's not the same all-star AHL caliber player like he was in October and November, but then he gets called up to Vancouver, and what does he do? Even though he's coming off a horrific injury, a fearful injury, a new dad, this guy's only job on the Canucks, in his opinion, was to lay the body. Lay the body, play physical, ask for it, risk injury again. And when I see things like that, I see a man. I really do. I see a guy who cares about this team. He's willing to play a role. Now, I don't know if that role is something that Canucks fans should be in love with for him, because at the end of the day, this team has traded a lot of draft picks over the last 2 years, and it would be nice for Podkolzin to somehow, some way, still reach that stature, right? I mean, this guy's a top 11 pick. And it's one thing to be Sam Lafferty, but man, oh man, it's also another thing to be a 20-goal, 50-point guy and do all those other things as well, right? And I don't know if that ship has sailed, but it would definitely be nice to still have a chance at that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think that ship has sailed, but I do wonder if that he's going to reach that potential in Vancouver. And, I look at a guy like Dakota Joshua. Isn't Dakota Joshua everything you want Vasily Podkolzin to be? Right?
Yep.
Bonafide penalty killer, 20-goal guy, can play up and down the lineup, is making an impact on a regular basis. Dakota Joshua is everything you want Vasily Podkolzin to be. And Dakota Joshua didn't get that chance, figure it out, until, the age of 25, 26, right? So I think there's still time for Podkolzin for sure. He's got talent there. He's got a great resume. The guy's performed as a teenager in the KHL playoffs, which is quite something. But yeah, just for whatever reason, just hasn't worked out in Vancouver, and confidence is a big part of it. Kyle, the fact you brought up that injury, a brutal check by AHL plug Curtis McDermott. That was a big part of his season as well. So Vasily Podkolzin, again, Sam Lafferty, if he could have a Sam Lafferty-like season, 13 goals, 24 points, I think we'd be happy.
No,
I think the ceiling right now, though, is probably with Dakota Joshua right now.
You know why I don't want like a Sam Lafferty type season? Because let's be real, like Sam Lafferty did all that work in the beginning of the season. Like we need a guy who's going to be consistent the whole way through, right? A guy that doesn't filter out. That's just the truth. Now let's get to some comments, because man, oh man, Beggsy, man, you about to get effing shot with a what's that sandwich that they have there, like the Montreal smoked meat?
Yeah,
the
Montreal smoked meat sandwich.
Yeah, you're gonna get smothered in roast beef. Okay, you're gonna suffocate because a Canadians fan is gonna fly to Vancouver with 4 pounds of Montreal smoked meat and shove it up your nostril. Okay, because they don't. Oh man, Trevor's got a kink apparently. Anyways, Samuel Bordage. I'm assuming I'm French Canadian too. Okay, he's saying you're not getting Wi-Fi, aka Xhekaj, for Podkolzin. Quit speculating. Okay, first of all, Samuel, we're not speculating. We're being fans. I'm not a reporter. Beggsy, wannabe reporter. But a fan first, okay? For real. We're not speculating. We're talking ish. It's just the truth. Now, Samuel's saying we're going to need a lot more to get Xhekaj, okay? How about, again, Podkolzin and a conditional third? How about that? Take that. Take that. Now, can I say something, too? Again, there's this huge appetite in Vancouver to replace Zadorov, right? The big hits, the swagger, the Xhekaj guy. Like, he looks like he has that swagger, right? He really does, and he does have that swagger. Like, sometimes he'll get into a scrap, and he'll leave the scrap and pump up the crowd, lift his hands up like he's that guy. And there's an appetite for that from diehard fans and casual fans of the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know if Podkolzin, again, can do that. He seems like way too nice of a guy to want the spotlight and also just be a complete jackass in a good way for your team, but the physicality, the Dakota Joshua reference, like there's something there, Trevor. There's something there. I actually like that comparable.
I've thought about it for a while because, again, when Podkolzin got drafted, obviously people got their visions of like this 25 goal, 50 to 60 point guy. Kyle, you might have even throw those numbers out at one point. But, I think the ceiling now for Podkolzin, based on what he's done in his trajectory, I think it's Dakota Joshua. If he can be a 20 goal, 40 point guy who's a middle six player, can play a top penalty killing minutes, can just bang and crash, I think that's the ceiling for Podkolzin. And if he turns that into that player, I think we'd all be fine with that. And I think he still has the potential to do so. This is still a fairly young guy at the end of the day. So I do still believe in Podkolzin to an extent. I don't think he's going to be a world beater. Now, the last thing I will say, if you want to get really optimistic with Podkolzin, is the team still has a hole in their top six. I think Podkolzin is probably like the seventh guy they consider for that right now. But if he has the opposite kind of training camp that he did last season, this guy has a chance to play big minutes for this team.
How does he do that, though?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. You're about to answer it.
Yeah. I do think he's got to pretty much have the opposite training camp that he did last season. And I don't want to say this guy's got to put in more work and get in better shape, because all we hear from Podkolzin out of Vancouver, and you see it at practice, one of the first guys on, one of the last guys off, the guy works his tail off. I think he needs to learn how to have fun out there again. And he needs to not be so hard on himself and just kind of play again with that swagger and that confidence, because he has it. I mean, this guy's been a leader for Russia at other tournaments before they all got banned. I think he needs to rediscover that, because he's got that dog in him, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so again, like, he has a dog in him. He tries hard, all that jazz. It's there, but it's quite clear that, ironically, this guy needs to try less hard. You get what I'm saying? Tap into his instincts. Don't take it so seriously all the time. You get what I'm saying? Like, he's got to ease up a bit. You're like, tap into your instincts. If you're trying way too hard, that is so impossible to find. It's so impossible to make that connection, okay? Speaking of the connection, okay, Samuel's saying sorry. Sorry that I got a little upset there, bro. I'm just defending my homie Trevor because, again, this guy got crazy threats yesterday, okay? I was super scared for this guy's livelihood after mentioning that Xhekaj could be got for a third-round pick, okay? You know what, Trevor Beggs? Again, the city just they already missed Zadorov. It's one of those things. Like, me and Beggsy have been there, okay? Well, let's end it on this note, okay? Me and Beggsy have been there. Our girls have, like, left us for other girls in the past, like our ex-girls, the girls that don't matter, but we were heartbroken. There was a time where I was just like, I know Beggsy can relate, crying in the shower, and the only thing you want is, the smell of your ex-girlfriend's hair, right? That's like the only, that's the similar hole that we're missing with Zadorov, and now we got Xhekaj and the swagger, and Xhekaj's like the next Zadorov. At the end of the day, Trevor, bro, comparison is the thief of joy, okay? Comparison is the thief of joy. All right. And you have to get more used to Tyler Myers being the best number 4 defenseman in all of hockey. Okay. You know what I'm saying, Trevor? Why can't you assume that, bro? It's because you're not reading Deepak Chopra. Anyways, Kyle Bhawan, Trevor Beggs, Locked On Canucks. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Who knows what we're going to talk about tomorrow? I think we're going to talk about Podkolzin's rivals on the team, right? I don't know. Sherwood, Heinen. We got to do it. It's Locked On Canucks, and we're signing out. Beggsy, you want to say anything to the people before we get out of here?
No, just some more fancy stats on Xhekaj. He played out against some pretty soft competition, and ironically, one of the top wingers he faced in terms of ice time this season was Danton Heinen. So, Danton Heinen, good player, but Arber Xhekaj not doing his thing against star players. Okay, so Montreal Canadiens, and I know you love Arber Xhekaj, but you're overvaluing your boy. And it's time to just ship him out to Vancouver for a 3rd-round pick. Anyways, we got to get out of here. Send it to the everydayers, the occasional listeners, the first-time listeners, the new subscribers, and those of you who joined us on the live show on YouTube. We love each and every one of you. Thanks again for tuning into Locked On Canucks. Again, Heinen versus Sherwood. Who's going to have the bigger impact next season? Podkolzin's rivals. We're going to talk about that coming up. And again, get into the news, rumors, roster-based nation stuff, all of it coming up on another episode of Locked On Canucks. But for now, we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bhawan. And you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On podcast